afternoon and welcome to the webinar on how to extend UPS WorldShip. I'm just going to give a couple minutes for additional people to get online. We'll be getting going 2 minutes after the hour. Thanks. Good afternoon and welcome to this afternoon's webinar on how to optimize UPS WorldShip in your pick, pack, ship operation. I'm Brian Hodson from Oz Development, and I'll be hosting the event along here with Troy Graham. So we're just going to give a quick overview of Oz Development. We're going to step through some specific customer case studies and successes where customers have leveraged UPS WorldShip and really integrated it more tightly into their pick, pack, ship process to drive some cost savings and productivity improvements. We'll talk a bit about the influence of e-commerce on the warehouse and the pick, pack, ship operation. Go through some examples and opportunities around extensions to WorldShip that can add value. We're going to do a demo of OzLINK solution, and we'll finish with Q&A. And just before I get going, housekeeping details. So everyone on the phone is muted. You can ask questions through the tool. And as we go through the session, if we can address the questions as we go, we will. Any questions we don't get to, we'll cover at the end. So again, I'm Brian Hodson, VP of Sales and Marketing at Oz Development. And I'm the guy on the left. Troy Graham is also here. Troy, you want to say a couple words?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. As Brian said, we've done an awful lot of work with UPS and extending WorldShip to sort of optimize your fulfillment processes. And today I'll kind of share some examples of some current customers and some of the things that they've done to help sort of improve their fulfillment, accuracy, and performance.
And just as a company background, Oz Development's been around a little over 10 years. We have over 10,000 joint customers with UPS. Really ranging in a wide variety of sizes. Could be sort of small entrepreneurial company, a couple examples here, college kids, Looney Labs examples, up to Fortune 500 companies. You see Lowe's, you see Verizon, Charles Schwab. So the number of different tools that we provide for that for the fulfillment process to streamline it. We've been a strategic partner of UPS now for 2 years. We've been in the UPS Ready program for about 8 years. And as Troy said, just working very closely both with the UPS team and the technology to help streamline customers' process. I'll start talking about some customer successes recently, and just 3 examples here, some newer wins working with the UPS team. Ovation Hair. So prior to us getting involved, they had basically a pick, pack, ship operation where they were printing out a set of pick tickets in the front office and printing the associated labels, taking them back to the they print them out. They're using NetSuite as their ERP, a cloud-based ERP, and they take them back to the warehouse. They'd go pick those items. They'd match the labels up with the orders and the shipments and ship them out. One of the challenges was matching up those labels and orders and even the efficiency in that picking process based on the sorting of those orders. So what we did is we integrated, pull a set of orders from a batch process so they can select a set of orders in NetSuite, print them out in batch in the warehouse based on what staff is available to do it, so streamline the use of the warehouse staff. And then that pick ticket also includes what we call a combo. We'll show you an example of that later. Includes the UPS label on the bottom of that pick ticket. So now, if you go pick out 20, 25 orders, they have no issues obviously mixing up the labels because they're assigned with that pick ticket. And then the flow of those orders is aligned because they're doing that in the warehouse where the actual work is happening. There's no running back and forth to the front office. There's no mixing up of shipping labels with orders, and really dramatically improved their pick, pack, ship process.
And the next one we'll talk about is a company called Image 3D. This is a pretty cool company that like a lot of you on the phone, I think have a lot of growth going on in their business, and they're always looking to try to sort of do more and support that growth without adding lots of cost. Well, in the case of Image 3D, they have an e-commerce site built on the Magento platform, which is very popular, very common e-commerce platform. And in the back end of their business, they were using QuickBooks for their financials, which again, very, very common scenario. The challenge was those 2 components were not talking to each other. So an order would come into Magento, and then a person would have to rekey that information into QuickBooks. And if we looked at it, what you would find is, 1, that was very time-consuming, and 2, it was an opportunity for mistakes. If you think about to yourself, you're sitting there all day long just sort of retyping or copying and pasting information back and forth from your e-commerce system into your accounting software, it's pretty easy to make a mistake there. Well, so in the case of Image 3D, what we did is we linked or connected the Magento system to the QuickBooks accounting software, and then connected QuickBooks to the UPS WorldShip software. So as opposed to somebody spending, a full-time job entering orders into QuickBooks and pushing tracking information manually back to Magento, that process was now integrated and automated. So a new order would come into Magento, it would automatically, through OzLINK, flow into the QuickBooks software, and then once that order actually got picked and packed out in the warehouse, and we shipped the order through UPS WorldShip and OzLINK connected to QuickBooks, OzLINK would also update Magento with a shipping status, tracking information, which Magento could push back out to your customers. So we took a process that was very slow, mistake-prone, and really streamlined that. So not only did the mistakes go away, did it cost the company less money to process those orders, but the actual visibility back to order status was improved for their customers. The thing that I really like about Image 3D, which is great, is they really sat back after they had implemented OzLINK and integrated their e-commerce application into QuickBooks, and they looked at it financially and said, well, what did this do for us? Forgetting better customer service for a minute, forgetting the mistakes that we were making, but simply hard dollars. What was the savings in labor that we experienced? And for them, it was over $10,000 that they were able to save in their first year simply by automating their order management process.
And the last one here is Doctor's Best. A similar sort of situation as Ovation Hair in terms of the process, separate pick ticket, separate shipping label. The key difference here is a totally different back end, and that's you'll go through this. One of the things that Oz provides is sort of an abstraction to that back end, and being able to streamline, extend UPS WorldShip, that pick-pack process, almost really regardless of the back end, as long as we can get data in and out, the order information out, tracking information, cost information back in. There's a lot of business rules and extensions that we can provide, and you know, as we talk about various customers, you know, Troy had mentioned the cost savings. Typical payback for our customers could be, you know, a few days to a few weeks, maybe a couple months in terms of payback based on their investment, and that creates obviously a fairly compelling event to go and continuously improve that warehouse process as things might be changing, as orders come in, new channels, those sort of things. We'll talk a bit about that sort of in a sec. So taking just a step back in terms of sort of market trends and things we see overall, we did a study with one of our partners, NetSuite, earlier this year on their whole order management, where they see opportunities, where their growth's coming from, those sort of things. So one of the questions we asked was, how do you know, what's the number one customer-focused initiative? And you can see here, by far and away, sort of order management was critical. And that, you know, thinking about even the example with Image 3D that Troy talked about, it's giving that visibility both internally, being able to manage, hey, orders coming in across multiple channels, making sure it aligns with where the inventory is, shipping it out, getting it out quickly with no errors, but also providing visibility externally to customers, getting that tracking number back out to the e-commerce site, or maybe sending a confirmation email, branded email, out to that customer confirming, yep, the order is shipped, here's what's in your order, here's the details, those sort of things. So by far and away was really streamlining that order management process. You can see the number 2 here was expanding e-commerce, and we'll talk a bit about that in terms of what does that mean for the pick, pack, ship process. The next one just to touch on is, you know, that we have to talk right here is, what are your growth initiatives? There was certainly in the e-commerce sector, expanding existing e-commerce channels, adding new marketplaces. On the far right there, expanding number of products offered. So each of those things are things that are driving growth. And each time, you know, a new product gets added, a new e-commerce channel gets added, that's going to add some special business rules or some complexity probably back in the pick, pack, ship process. So we'll talk just in terms of various initiatives. Just wanted to highlight, you know, the areas that are impacted by that, and opportunities to automate, streamline, eliminate potential additional cost, errors that result from these growth initiatives. And I won't step through each cell here, but down the left you have various initiatives. So for example, expanding e-commerce, broader product catalog. Across the top are operational processes that get impacted. So I'll just pick a couple here just to highlight. You know, expanding e-commerce. You know, we're seeing a lot of people, at the manufacturer is also now starting to sell through their website to consumers. Wholesale distributors also. So the order mix of, you know, single items for your consumer versus, you know, more larger orders, more complex orders for their B2B partners. That's going to create some business rules, some more complexities in the warehouse in terms of maybe how those items get picked, the shipping options that you may need if you're just, you know, starting out with, you know, maybe new consumers. You may be using things like SurePost. Those type of labeling requirements, maybe customers you're drop shipping on behalf of a customer. All those sort of things are going to add complexity to your pick, pack, ship process.
You know, along those lines, Brian, you find a lot of companies that maybe you were traditionally a manufacturer or a distributor, but you're now enrolled in dropship programs as those e-commerce channels expand. So you may have requirements to do things like generate a packing slip that has somebody else's branding on it, or maybe even things that seem simple like changing the return address. You know, I'm doing a drop shipment on behalf of my customer. I want that label to have my customer's name on it because this product is going out to their end consumer. And so to me, those are a couple of good examples of the types of business rules where traditionally we think about, well, we need to train the staff to remember those business rules. And if it's a dropship order, we got to change the return address as an example. The goal here, to me, is to give you some ideas of, are there manual steps in your warehouse that are happening that we can automate, so that if you needed to insert into the warehouse a temporary person, let's say, that isn't going to know much about your business, that they could be efficient and help get orders sort of packed and shipped. And to me, that largely comes down through automating business rules, like the couple of examples we started with here.
Yeah, and one area I want to touch on is the expanding marketplaces. We'll talk a bit about Groupon goods, where we're seeing some growth. And that's certainly a smaller percentage of our customers' business, but it's one of the fastest growing areas. And more people, there's getting more marketplace sort of players involved. Traditionally, Amazon, eBay have been out there, Sears.com, those are things. Groupon now has Groupon goods. Last week I read a story about Staples, how they're creating a marketplace. So just really changing how products get delivered, how they get sold. And again, all that flows back to potentially creating complexity in the warehouse, that you really want to try to minimize the complexity, minimize the additional costs, and keep that process as streamlined as possible. So in terms of OzLINK, we talked about the over 10,000 customers with UPS. We have a number of solutions that are under the OzLINK for UPS banner. On the bottom left, too, are some rating solutions for the front office. Today, we're really going to spend most of our time talking about OzLINK for UPS Custom, which provides with all of its extensions, can integrate to a whole set of hosts, both e-commerce applications and ERP accounting systems on the backside. We'll go into a lot more detail about that. The only other one I wanted to highlight in that, so the third from the top right, I should say, is OzLINK Pro. That provides an out-of-the-box integration with NetSuite and QuickBooks. So if you have either NetSuite or QuickBooks as an accounting system, very straightforward to simply go and activate that solution. It pulls the order information from the accounting system into WorldShip. You process the order as you normally would in WorldShip, and then it writes the tracking costs back into that accounting system. It can get up and running in about 15 minutes from activation on the website. But today, really the focus is around OzLINK Custom. And really, with the goal of OzLINK Custom is really to leverage, make sure that as you're shipping with UPS, UPS WorldShip is sort of integrated tightly to streamline that process. So you may have orders coming in, a sales team typing things into your ERP system, orders coming in from various e-commerce channels. That might be your own website, might be marketplaces. Those are the things. Integrate that information, and we'll talk about a couple different models that we see for e-commerce integration into the order management process, and then feed the status, tracking number, cost back to the right systems. But all about extending the e-commerce automation. We'll talk a number about extensions in the warehouse that can be those business rules that you have a similar process at a high level, but so if you're getting orders from JCPenney, from Sears with branded pack slips, your warehouse person, your shipping person doesn't need to understand all those business rules. OzLINK integrates and ties those systems together so that the different variants all happen automatically.
Hey, Brian, a quick question had come in through the chat that I just thought I would mention as we're here. The question came in regards to business rules and different sort of order sources as I'm reading it. So the way I look at it is the question is, what if I've got orders that come in through my e-commerce environment, and maybe I want to apply a certain set of business rules to those orders that may be different from orders that come through my ERP or accounting system? Is that something that's supported through OzLINK and the type of integrations you're describing with OzLINK Custom?
Yeah, so certainly, as long as that's captured as part of the order attributes. I mean, the business, we sort of divide things into business rules as to if you see, let's say, an order coming in from Amazon, and maybe it's a drop ship on behalf of you at dropship. Capturing that attribute certainly can be automated as part of the OzLINK process. as opposed to sort of extensions, which might be the result of those business rules. Producing the pack slip, sending the branded email, but certainly being able to, any attribute of that order, whether it's what channel it came in from, who it's going to, the weight size, can be automated with business rules.
Perfect. Thank you. And this is a good list. To me, it's sort of a starting point. You know, one of the questions we often get when we do a webinar like this is, well, what systems do you integrate to? And the reality is there's hundreds of different systems that are commercially available, like you'll see a lot listed here. And there are a lot of companies running a system that, you know, maybe was built internally or is a legacy system that maybe is not commercially available today. And part of the approach that we take is having the flexibility, having the tools that are appropriate. So if we've got a web services integration or a SQL database integration or a socket level communication or whatever mechanism or whatever technology needs to be used, that the OzLINK platform gives us that flexibility to integrate to those different systems. And you know, as we've been talking a little bit about, a lot of times we do have business rules that are dependent on where that order came from. So we a lot of times will sort of break the integration down into different sort of categories of e-commerce integration. And I think about different rules that might be appropriate for e-commerce. For example, I might have an order come in through my website where somebody paid for economy shipping. And I want to have a business rule. I want to make a business decision that says, well, based on time in transit with UPS, I'm going to send it ground versus 3-day. Or maybe I'm getting near the holidays and I guarantee my customer that this package would get there for the 24th. I'm going to upgrade that service level. So you'll see some rules that might be somewhat channel-centric, and then you might have something coming out of your accounting software that's more a traditional wholesale order. This type of customer doesn't pay for shipping, where a smaller order, maybe it does need to pay for shipping. But at a high level, this is just a partial list of the types of systems that can be integrated automatically with your UPS shipping process.
So now we'll start to drill in on terms of the extensions around WorldShip, and they really fall into 3 categories. So e-commerce automation, we've talked a lot about the various sources coming in, and we'll give you a couple of examples of models of how we see people integrating their e-commerce channels into their order management process. But the other things we can do, sort of layered on top of that are, as the order is coming in prior to, let's say, putting it into your accounting system, flag it for business rules like maybe it needs approval if the order is over a certain amount, over $1,000 or over $5,000, depending on your business. Or perhaps if the ship to and the bill to are different states. That's an example. You may want to flag that. Mark it as pending approval in the accounting system prior to getting released to the warehouse. Whereas maybe all other orders automatically just flow through and get released to the warehouse. So that, again, provides certainly a cost savings in terms of automating that process, but still not giving up any control to risk that might be in associated orders. Another example of extensions we do on the front end with e-commerce, maybe you have perhaps multiple locations. You have a customer, they have 15 different locations. They get an order in, they want to check the inventory of the ERP system. Where do I have inventory? And given where this shipment is going to, which of these locations should fulfill that order? Obviously, they're trying to cut down on the shipping cost, or get that to the customer as quickly as possible, and leverage the inventory appropriately. So those are some of the rules that we'll do on that sort of front end of that process, sort of order routing, we call that. Warehouse extensions, so those are sort of documents and business processes inside the pick, pack, ship process, and we'll give some more, a lot of concrete examples here in the next few slides. And then finally, business rules around shipping. To Troy's point, if you're now shipping to, doing some B2C type shipments, is it best to use SurePost or ground? Or if there's things that may perhaps you have to get it there by a certain time, does it make sense to look at some time in transit data to pick the right UPS service? Turn on things like insurance or proof of delivery, perhaps based on the value of the goods that are being shipped, or the type of goods being shipped, or where they're being shipped to, those sort of things.
And just to touch one more on the shipping rules, international shipping. You know, this time of year, you've got products, you've got expanding markets. Maybe some of you are starting to sell internationally, and you recognize that we need to collect a lot more information for an international shipment. I need things like country of origin and harmonized codes. Part of that integration gives us the flexibility to collect that other information out of your ERP system, not just shipping address, service level, but if you find yourself or somebody in your company that's out manually typing in you know, commodity level information for those international shipments, and those are really slowing down your warehouse. Those are things that can be automated with information directly out of the ERP system.
So now I just want to cover a couple different options that we see for customers integrating their e-commerce channels. And at a high level, we break it into two categories. One is what we call channel-centric, and that's where typically we see that on companies that are sort of born, I call them born on the web. They started out maybe selling on eBay. They've now expanded. But what they're looking to do is integrate WorldShip typically directly with that e-commerce app. You know, pulling orders from eBay to WorldShip and updating eBay. They don't, you know, pull those orders through an ERP system. On the right side is a model we call order-centric. You know, they're typically more mature companies. They maybe have a sales team that's entering orders into the ERP system, and e-commerce is a newer channel to them. So they're really trying to make sure that they're incorporating their new channels from e-commerce into their existing model. They're not selling inventory on e-commerce that's already getting sold through their direct team. And the implications of sort of the integration in the business process are really dictated by this approach. Now, some companies will have a combination, but this is sort of a high-level way to think about a couple of options. And we're going to take a look at two examples of, one example of each of these scenarios with real customers.
Yeah, so this is a customer that I did some work with called Royal Oak Peanuts, where they had, again, an e-commerce business. It was somewhat seasonal. They do a lot of gift-type items. And this very nice woman at Royal Oak where she said, you know, 75% of my day is spent rekeying, retyping information. So she would take an order that came into Magento. She would either cut and paste each line or type that information into QuickBooks. And at the holiday season, it just became, their business was growing, which was great, but it was getting to the point that she simply couldn't keep up, so that there were orders that were getting delayed. So then they started to have to upgrade shipping service level because they couldn't get the orders out the door fast enough. So to me, I like this diagram at the top because what we did, these arrows, you'll see what OzLINK helped to automate for them. So when an order came in to Magento, it was automatically pushed into their QuickBooks accounting system. So instead of this nice woman coming in the morning and seeing in Magento she had 100 orders thinking, oh gosh, I've got to key all these into my accounting software now. She came in, these orders were already inside of QuickBooks. She could review them and then make them available for shipping in their warehouse. And then in their warehouse, what they found was there were people in the warehouse that were rekeying that same information again into the UPS WorldShip software. So, you know, sort of bad enough that we were typing the information once into QuickBooks, now we had people rekeying that information into WorldShip. So again, through OzLINK, we shared information electronically between QuickBooks and WorldShip so that ultimately what used to take 2 or 3 minutes per shipment to type all that address information into WorldShip was now the click of a button. The user would print out their shipping label, put it on the box, and by the time that label was on the box, QuickBooks was updated, that order was indicated that it had shipped, and Magento was also updated. So my customer got a tracking number from Magento. If my customer came back to the Magento site, they could see, yep, it's been shipped, here's the tracking number. So we really took a small business that couldn't really afford to have, you know, so many new people added into their business to support their growth, but wanted to sort of maintain that core staff that they had and support the growing number of orders. And so through integration for them meant all the difference in the world, that they could go and continue to focus on growing the business and focus on marketing and focus on their products and not really worry about the information flow inside of their business.
Now, the second example, a little more channel-centric, is a customer, and we have a customer, Stampede Global. They do presentation equipment, those sort of things. And what they're doing is automating. They run a number of Groupon events selling their items. And Groupon is about 18 months ago started a group called Groupon Goods. So if you buy restaurant things or trips from Groupon, now they're selling goods through this, and they have a whole set of suppliers to be able to fulfill those. And one of the challenges, just simply from a logistics standpoint, is the number of customers we've spoken to. They may have, whether it's 100, 150, or 500 orders a day. They run a Groupon event, and all of a sudden they have another 50% or even 100% of their expected daily orders on top of that they need to get out in the next day. The Groupon vendor guide requires a certain branded pack slip. They have to get them out by a certain date. They have to update the Groupon website with tracking information. So logistically, that becomes quite a challenge. So the integration, what we've done with OzLINK, is be able to pull those orders down from Groupon, and they have a technology called Commerce Interface. We create a combination combo branded pack slip with a UPS label on the bottom. You can see it at the top right. And then on top of that, there's another customer, they do headphones of different colors. So we sort those pick lists based on the SKU number, so that now as they get printed out, let's say they print out a batch of 25 or 50, they're sorted to facilitate that pick process by item in the warehouse. And automatically the tracking number is sent back up to Groupon, and it just dramatically streamlines their whole sort of pick, pack, ship process. And then they can actually, at Stampede Global, they said because of the efficiencies, they've actually increased the number of Groupon events per month that they've done. And they estimated on each one they're saving $7,000 to $8,000 in costs for each time they run a Groupon event.
Yeah, and I think, to me, that's really the key, that Groupon is great to get these customers and to get these orders, but oftentimes based on the nature of Groupon, it's a lower margin sale. So to take a potentially lower margin sale and have a higher cost of fulfillment is a real challenge for customers selling through Groupon. And to me, these are great examples of let's make Groupon profitable and not have it sort of derail the typical high level of customer service you're providing to other customers that come through your website. And I think these are great examples, Brian.
So now we're going to drill into some extensions around UPS WorldShip. And as your e-commerce expands and the number of different customers, if it's a B2B, typically who you're shipping to more often than not. In the consumer world, sometimes you'll get addresses that aren't valid. So providing sort of a pre-ship batch address validation, looking through those ahead of releasing those orders to the warehouse can be a huge cost savings in terms of shipments. Either you get fees for invalid addresses, or worse, it was typed in wrong and it gets sent to the wrong person, and you get a dissatisfied customer, gets returned, or you've lost that good forever, those sort of things. So being able to streamline through those addresses, highlight which ones are valid, which ones need to be reviewed and corrected, can be a huge cost saver and efficiency saver, and also taking it away from the work in the warehouse where they're really just trying to get the orders out the door in an effective way.
And I want to just share a quick example, because it happened yesterday, where we've got a customer that ships with UPS that sells these fuzzy slippers, basically. These slippers where you can get them where they might have your favorite sports team logo on them, or your dog or cat or whatever. And the UPS team was in talking with him about his business and kind of ramping up for the holidays, and he was really stuck on address validation. And so we were talking a little bit about it, and he said, this woman called me up, and she was just yelling at me because her package that she had shipped to her relative as a gift had gotten returned to his company. And he was saying, I felt really bad, and this woman who had called was really sort of tough on him. And they went back to their e-commerce system and said, but you typed the address in wrong. And so it was a situation where the person who had actually placed the order typed the address in wrong, but she was calling and just sort of yelling at him where he said, boy, it would be great if, even though the person placing the order made a mistake, if I could have corrected that either automatically or, as you said, Brian, even just flagged it to say, hey, I think there's a problem, and I could have called her before that item shipped, then his product would have gotten out the door. And so to me, it was a really good example of something that we sort of take for granted. Hey, people place an order, they type their address in right. The reality is they don't, and a lot of times, even if the consumer does it wrong, they're still unhappy with you because their package didn't get to where it needed to be on a timely basis.
And so this is, we've talked a lot about the pack combo, pack slip, UPS label. So this is an example of what we're talking about. You have a pack slip here on the right with UPS label on the bottom. Now, this is an example with Oz branding. Typically, customers will put their own branding on. You can put some QR promotional code in that pack slip if you want to drive additional business or follow on, add-on sales, those sort of things. Another example of this is, we see it a fair bit in the apparel where maybe a return label and an outbound label are printed. So you do the pick, pack, ship, you apply the outbound label, you put the whole pack slip in the box as part of that pack process, so to facilitate, if there's a high level of return, to facilitate that for the customer.
Hey, Brian, a quick question just came through the chat about the packing slip, and it says, my company has multiple brands. Can I have different packing slip templates or different packing slip branding?
Yes, absolutely. So in terms of, as we look at those orders, pulling them out of the ERP system, we would set up different templates, and then we would just simply need a flag on that order, say, which key, to key which template we want to use. It could be a business, it could be coming from the end channel. So absolutely can support different templates, and that gets automated. So the person actually doing that process, actually operationally, doesn't need to know the right brand will print out for that order that comes out of the accounting system.
Yeah, to me that one sort of comes back to my seasonality or a seasonal business. Hey, I'm bringing in temporary employees, and they probably don't care that much if they put the wrong packing slip in the box. So this is a great way to ensure that whatever comes out of the printer, that's the right format, the right branding around that packing slip.
And then here's a couple of examples. On the left is what we call branded email. So really, if you think about sending an email out through Quantum View Notify, doesn't have the order details, doesn't have your own company brand. This is, again, an opportunity to touch that customer with your brand, reinforce the brand, maybe, again, have QR codes, promotional coupons as part of that, and that can be customized to your specific look. And again, we have customers who have it set up such that the coupon changes depending on sort of the order or that customer type. It can be fairly complex things. There's a customer that had a, high growth. They were growing at about 35–40%. They implemented this. It dramatically cut down. They're actually a B2B technology company. It cut down dramatically on calls into their call center, just because, again, their customers could confidently say, hey, here's the 3 or 4 boxes that I've ordered, communications boxes, which is the equipment they sold, and I'm getting them. Here's the tracking number. Eliminated that call, improved their customer satisfaction, and for that basic feature, they estimated they saved about $10,000 to $12,000 a year.
Hey, Brian, I was going to add one more example to that I thought was pretty interesting, and I hadn't really thought about. We have a customer that they ship a lot of golf equipment, apparel, clubs, that sort of thing. And they were doing a branded email notification. And one of the things they were doing in that email was including a coupon code. Well, last year, the challenge or the problem that they had was there's a number of websites out there where people were posting these coupon codes. And so they may be wanting to offer a customer that is a good, loyal, repeat customer a nice coupon, but these coupon codes were sort of spreading throughout the world. So within their e-commerce system, they went to a unique coupon code per customer, so that based on some business rules, if you spent $1,000, you got a coupon for 30% off. If you spent $50, you might get a 10% off coupon or something like that. But their challenge was, how do I integrate that? So with OzLINK, we actually would communicate with the e-commerce system, and each time we got ready to send this email, we would go get essentially a token or a coupon code from the e-commerce system. So now that integration wasn't really tied directly to a shipping process, but it was tied to their e-commerce, and it really helps them cut down on people trying to share those coupon codes because they're unique per customer based on the characteristics. So it's another area where we can see some cost savings by sharing information, in this case with their e-commerce platform.
And another module or extension is what we call time and transit optimization, and there's two scenarios that are illustrated here. On the left side, it's really trying to drive some cost savings. So looking at something maybe that came in as an order, it's marked to be a 2-day delivery. Based on at shipment time in the warehouse, doing a time in transit and saying, well, even though it's set for a 2-day service, could it go ground and still get there in 2 days? And being able to make that recommendation, being able to do that, save on transportation costs. On the flip side of that coin is the right side, where perhaps there's a deadline, a required delivery date. The order came in, it was going to go, it was actually going to go ground, but perhaps there's some delays in the fulfillment, those sort of things, and now it needs to be expedited. Next day air or second day air, those sort of things. Again, being able to pull that required delivery date, assess against, say, which UPS service is going to make sure you get it there. Now, the increased cost is worth it because there's penalties or customer satisfaction issues to meet that date. So there's just a couple of examples to leverage the time and transit information to both drive cost savings, improve customer satisfaction, and again, not have that person at the ship station have to think about that process and think about making those decisions at all.
Another question had come in, Brian, about a company that has multiple distribution centers. And the question is, can we have multiple UPS account numbers in different locations, and can that be supported? And one of the examples that comes to my mind is a company that actually sells sneakers online and shoes, but they also have a number of retail stores. So part of their process of order integration is checking to see which stores have inventory, which store is closest to the end consumer, and routing that order off to that appropriate location to ship that product out to their customer. And certainly that can support having different account numbers from different origin points. We even have some companies that have different brands internally within the same facility, and they may say, hey, if I ship an order for Troy's company, I want to use account number 1, but Brian's company, we want to use UPS account number 2, purely from an accounting perspective. So support for multiple account numbers, whether they're in one location or multiple locations, is certainly the type of automation we can provide.
Also customer account numbers, so really sort of any combination is to accommodate and streamline that process. And then in terms of specific shipping business rules, we've talked about this a fair bit, but think about any attribute of that shipment that could impact how you're going to pick the UPS service and various options available. So things like weight, things going to a residential under a certain weight may go SurePost or Mail Innovations. If it's valuable, maybe you want to turn insurance on or have proof of delivery. Based on the commodity, may require proof of delivery. So all those shipment details can be captured as part of these business rules to really make sure you're picking the right UPS service and the right options. Other scenarios might be where it's going to. It's going to maybe an urban environment, so you want a proof of delivery, you don't want it left simply on the doorstep. Maybe it's based on a particular customer, so maybe there's some loyalty programs and you may upgrade their service for no extra charge. All of those sort of things are what we would call business shipping rules to really, again, streamline that process, make sure that you're balancing those, the cost of shipping with the customer expectation, customer satisfaction. So we're going to do a quick demo now of the solution in action. So we'll just give you a visibility to how it works. And again, I think the key thing to see here is thinking about that temporary staff or a person you rest, really trying to minimize, keep it very simple for them. and minimize the sort of thinking and decisions they have to do so they can focus on really getting those orders out the door.
Great. And I'm going to use an example here of a NetSuite ERP system. And really the ERP system doesn't make a whole lot of difference what it is. I just happen to have a NetSuite login here. So if I'm out in the warehouse, I'm logged into NetSuite, and here I'm going to indicate, which items I'm going to ship. But from a shipping perspective, which is the example we're going to show today, is all I've got is a button. If I want to be able to ship this order, I don't want the user to really have to put much thought or much effort into the process. I click the button, OzLINK pushes that information over to WorldShip. Now, as that happens, we may make some of those decisions like downgrading a service level or automating insurance or anything along those lines, billing third-party account numbers. All that can happen automatically. So the user, I just click the button.
Yeah, and at this point, if you may be, printing out a branded pack slip, when you hit ship confirm, it may then send that branded email. So all of those things are happening in the background. The person actually doing the shipping doesn't really need to know. Obviously, they're going to take that the pack slip in this. That will be a little upstream to put it in the box. Those are things, but all that sort of happens in the background rather than having that person remember print this, select this. It's really streamlined and automated.
Yeah, to me, to boil it down, I want the person to put the box on the scale, hit process shipment, and out comes the label, the packing slip, whatever documentation is appropriate for that customer. And as I'm putting that label onto the package or packages, we want to make sure that there's some real-time visibility back to my accounting software, back to my e-commerce software. And here's just a quick example where I can see that in this particular case, we shipped one box that weighed 5 pounds. We shipped it UPS ground. Here's my tracking number. Here's a hyperlink to the tracking number, and a simple status that lets anybody with access to the system to know, yes, it's been shipped. And to me, that's a very important status because we want that to be real time. So if this customer happened to call us up and say, hey, I want to change my order, cancel my order, I want to know where it is, anybody with access to the system should be able to see that real time. And so the demonstration sort of aspect of OzLINK is really very, very simple. How few clicks can I have to make? How few buttons do I need to push? How few keys do I need to hit and get that package out the door with as little effort and little time as possible?
And little decisions.
Yeah. Very, very. I mean, it's probably not polite sometimes, but really just assume, I use that scenario of a temporary employee. Just assume they don't really care if your business is profitable or not. They're looking at it sort of as a temporary job. We really want to sort of cater to them and make sure that type of employee can be efficient and productive for you.
So that sort of finishes to the end of the presentation and the demo. We do, I don't know if we have some questions left, and we've answered questions as we go. One question certainly we get are things like, what's the process? How long does it take to do these integrations, to get some of these things in place? I don't know if Troy, you want to just give a couple of examples or just a general process.
Yeah, and it definitely depends on the systems and things, but it can range anywhere from, like the NetSuite example that we were just looking at is through OzLINK Pro, where it's something where we can literally go to the website, download it, and 10, 15 minutes that can be in place. To something that may be more, more advanced than that, and it could take a week or two to put something in place. The Royal Oak Peanut I talked about, where we did the Magento integration and the QuickBooks integration, that was probably sort of a 2 to 3 week from the time they said go to the time that was implemented out in their business. So relatively sort of short projects. They're generally not projects that are 6, 8 months. They're generally 6, 8 days is kind of more the type of work that we do with OzLINK.
Yeah, I mean, the other key thing that I'd comment, a lot of customers may say, hey, WorldShip's not integrated at all. So start with that basic integration, maybe a branded email, then layer it, and then get payback on that. Get that return on investment within a couple months. And then it may add things like branded pack slips or time in transit optimization, all those sort of things. But that sort of core integration is fundamental to really getting that first leap of productivity.
Another question, Brian, that had come in was in regard to the demonstration. And they said, I don't want my users to have access to our ERP system. And that's not a common, not an uncommon request where, for example, we want the user to just have a barcode scanner and scan a picking ticket and use that to initiate their shipping process versus logging into the order management system. And that's certainly a model that's supported through OzLINK. So if I want to be able to scan a barcode and start shipping, or I want to type an order number in and start shipping without necessarily being logged into that host system, is certainly a common model and something that we can support.
Oh, any more questions? Okay, great. So we answered them. Appreciate everyone's time this afternoon. I understand everyone's busy. So again, thank you for taking the time. Hopefully you got what you expected out of this. If you have any further questions, certainly feel free to reach out to us via email at sales@ozdevelopment.com. There's also a number of resources you can use just to sort of stay plugged in a little more, probably on your own time, more passively. There's an OzLINK user forum where if there's new capabilities that come out, or maybe customer examples that might fit a solution that you might implement, where they've already shown some success, we'll highlight that in that forum. We have a specific UPS page or microsite, we call it, where there's YouTube videos of solutions in action and detailed specs and customer case studies as well. So that's at www.ozdevelopment.com/UPSready. And then all of the solutions that are activated from that microsite have a 15-day trial. So the Pro solution, the Plus solution, you can activate it, try it before actually buying it. The custom solution does require a set of implementation on our side. But again, there's a number of YouTube videos of that just to get a feel for how they work and how they might help your business.
Great. Thanks again, everybody, for the time today. We really appreciate it. And as Brian said, if other questions come up, certainly feel free to give us a ring or drop us an email. And I think Brian will post the webinar as well, so I think we'll send everybody the link.
The link to the webinar and the slides, yep.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.